get started by introducing our guests. So let me get your attention. So let's see, from my left here, we have Ben Guza, who graduated in 2022. He majored in philosophy and is a teacher and head of the men's formation at John Paul the Great Montessori Academy here in Front Royal. During an employer visit to campus, gosh, in 2021 or in 2022? Spring of 2022, probably.
Yes.
He was interviewed and then hired by Valor Education, and they are actually down in Texas. So he taught middle school math and science at a state charter school of 500 students. And that was the beginning, the charter school was beginning its first year.
Yes.
I need to use proper grammar in my own things so that I can read it better. It was beginning its very first year down in Austin, Texas. And he also led the school's swing dance club, and he is now in his second year of teaching. All right, then we have Bailey Young, and she graduated in 2019, majored in political science and economics. She is the first grade teacher at Chelsea Academy down the road. She actually spent 4 years teaching second grade at Dominion Ridge Academy, which was previously Front Royal Christian School. And she is currently working on her master's degree in elementary education at Regent University. And then she has her Virginia provisional teaching license and will have her Virginia teaching license at the end of the school year. So we're gonna ask questions about that because we wanna know about it. Seems like it's a great process, right? Yeah, okay.
A lot of government tape.
Okay, excellent. So, and then we have Annie Heisler. She graduated in 2021. She grew up here in Front Royal, where she was homeschooled and also attended courses at Classical Cottage School in Winchester. She worked for her dad's hardwood floor company for a year before enrolling here at Christendom, where she completed the teaching practicum under the tutelage of Mrs. McShirley down at Chelsea Academy. Upon graduation, Annie went on a mission year to teach in the underserved community of the Bronx through Seton Teaching Fellows. And we will actually have somebody from Seton Teaching Fellows here on campus on October 11th. I just talked to him today to schedule that. And then during that year, you co-taught in a kindergarten classroom in a public charter school and instructed fourth graders in catechism in the school's after-school program. She is now starting her second year of teaching, right? Only your second, at Chelsea as well in sixth grade. So give them a round of applause. Thank you for being here. You guys are so generous with your applause. I love it. Okay, so let's start out with kind of a common question that we do here with Life on Taps is, by the way, welcome freshmen. This is your first Life on Tap. Thank you for your patience. It's not always this lengthy to get in here and get started. Tell us what led you to decide on pursuing teaching as a career, Annie.
So I graduated in 2022, and going into my senior year, I was wondering what I would be doing next year. And so then I thought, oh, well, I like kids, and I love people, and I love talking. So, so then I started thinking about going into teaching. So I kind of just sat with it all of fall, and then going into the spring semester, I did the teaching practicum. And so I went to Chelsea, and then I started actually getting experience with kids, instructing kids. And so, yeah, they wanted me to apply there, so I started kind of applying at Chelsea, but then the Seton Teaching Fellow recruit came, and so then that's kind of how I got my foot in the door of teaching. I just wanted to teach. I was homeschooled, so it wasn't like lots of people's stories are like, oh, I had a teacher and she was so amazing. And I mean, I did have a teacher, my mom, she was amazing. But I just wanted to go into teaching to, have that experience with kids and, being able to instruct them. So.
Awesome. Okay, Bailey?
I loved school growing up. I was in traditional school. It was Catholic school, and I would play school with my stuffed animals and make my sister be my student. So I always wanted to be a teacher, and I also did the teaching practicum here. Would highly recommend it. I did the teaching practicum at Chelsea a little bit, and then also at Front Royal Christian School. And then I got hired there I subbed the second semester of my senior year, so it was a full-time sub after graduation, and then I subbed 3 days a week there while I was a senior. So it worked out really well because I was able to kind of teach and go to school at the same time just to figure out what I wanted to do. I think a lot of people think teaching is great. Like from the outside, it looks awesome, but it's definitely not for everyone. So I would highly recommend like getting into the classroom to see if it's something that you are really interested in. That's why I would also recommend it, doing it first semester so that you have second semester to figure out your life if you realize teaching's not for you.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So with the teaching practicum, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it is a 6-credit class. So you need to kind of plan ahead and make sure you have that space in your schedule to take that many credits your senior year. And so she's saying, if you do it in the fall semester and you realize you don't like it, then you have the spring semester to kind of figure things out. Whereas if you do it in the spring semester, you better be sure, because you have less time to figure things out. So
Mrs. Stevens will help you figure it out.
Absolutely, I will happily help you. Ben, tell us about you and teaching.
So what was the question again, just to get it straight?
What made you want to go into teaching as a career?
Okay. I want to just make sure we're not going into it thinking like, okay, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, because that's not the case. You're not going to know you're going to be a good teacher until you're actually in the classroom or even years later. But what drew me to it, it was kind of trial and error. Growing up, I loved working outdoors, doing landscaping. And I also loved being in the classroom. I was a philosophy major. I loved discussing bigger topics. And I decided that was one path I wanted to choose. So beginning my junior year, I started already making plans for trying to get experience at least, just to see if I was interested. And then as I went through it, I didn't see any big red flags. I figured, okay, this is going pretty well. I'm gonna give this first year a chance. And there's a bit of a story. You mentioned the interview.
Yeah.
Is now a good time to tell that story?
Sure, go for it.
So, Valor Education is the charter school I went to first year down in Texas. Complete left fields, because I'm from Michigan. Texas, I didn't have any interest in going to Texas. But it was senior year. I was looking at different schools. They came to campus, and I understood it to be where they were just going to show us what the school was all about. So I thought I was just going to sit there and just listen to what the school is about and see if I wanted to apply. Turns out it was actually an interview. I didn't have any time to prep, like you would hope you would have time to prep. Mm-hmm. And I just winged it. And by the end of the interview, they asked me hey, do you want to just come out and check the school and see if you want to continue down this road? And I said, sure, let's do it. And so followed that path.
It all worked out. Yeah. I'm so glad it worked out for you.
Yes.
And I really want you to hear that he took a chance in going to a place that he didn't know anybody. And really and truly, you didn't know anybody, right?
Nope.
We have some connections with Valor Education through, I think, Dr. Cuttaback and Mrs. Hickson. And so that's why they came. So it's not like they're completely, but I realize I have my back to you all. Okay, we're going to work on this situation for next time. We are learning as we go. We have connections with the people at Valor Education. They're not complete strangers or anything, but for Ben, he took that leap of faith to go down there and see how it was. And so I say this in as many EFL classes as I can. I want you to take those chances and go get out of your comfort zone, try something new. So I'll stop now. Yeah, we got to figure this, we're going to figure this situation out, you guys. I don't have anywhere to put my water. Let's talk about, you guys kind of all mentioned you have to try it out, see if you like it. Tell us what your day-to-day is like. I mean, run us through the whole day so that they have a better idea, if they're not able to get into the classroom quite yet, what it looks like. So, who wants to start?
I'll start. Okay. My day starts, I get up at 6, and then I go and I leave I kind of have a relaxed morning. I leave at 6:55 to go over to Chelsea. I live in the neighborhood that's across the train tracks from, the train tracks. And so it's a short commute. So I get to school at 7 so that I can get to the printer
Yes.
before everyone else.
Get to the printer when you can.
I print all of my things for my classes, and then we have a chapel at Chelsea. It's an amazing blessing for our school. So I go and I pray my rosary in the morning when no one else is there, and then I start hearing doors slamming. So then I know, okay, the kids are coming in. So then I go back to my class, and then at 8:15, the whole school goes to convocation, which is in the gym, and we do announcements, birthdays, Pledge of Allegiance, and we pray morning offering. And then I go up with my PE girls, my 6th and 7th grade PE class, and then I have PE. Then I have a free period that I'm stationed at the front desk. And then I teach grammar, 6th grade, 7th grade literature, lunch. Then I have a period that's off. And then 6th grade is literature, history, religion, all in a row. And so then I leave, or they all leave my classroom at 3:22. And then I kind of wrap up, and I do a little bit of grading, pack up all my stuff, and I usually leave the building around 4:30.
Okay. How many?
So 7 to 4:30 is kind of when I'm at the school.
How many classes are you prepping for in a day?
So I prep for 5 classes, but I have 6 classes, but PE doesn't really take it for me. I do firmly believe in PE, but it just comes more naturally for me, so I don't need to prep it.
So you said you have a free period in there. Is that like a planning period for you to catch up on grading and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
You can use it how you want. My free period is really nice, and it goes along with lunch. So when I don't have to cover lunch, I cover lunch twice a week, so I have to watch the kids. But when I don't have to cover and I have that free period, I actually try to make it to Mass. So like tomorrow I can make it to 11:30 Mass here because of the way the lunch works. And so, yeah, I try to make it to Mass as often, but I understand, like, yeah, it's more of just like a blessing when it happens, and then it doesn't happen sometimes. But yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Bailey, tell us about your day.
So I also teach at Chelsea, so it's somewhat similar to Annie's. But I get there actually usually at the beginning of the school year. I was getting there around 7. Now it's like 7:35, 7:40. I'll walk in with the kids. And so we have convocation first thing in the morning. And then all of elementary has a math block together. So K to 5th does math first period all together. Well, all together, I mean in our separate classrooms, but everybody is doing math at the same time. And then so we have math, and then we do religion, and then I teach science, and then we get lunch. And 2 days a week, I cover their lunch, just like Annie does. And then, honestly, our day-to-day schedule is very different because it's just kind of the way elementary is. Some days they have PE, some days they have music and art, and it's at different times during the day, so it's just kind of a matter of being flexible. But during those planning periods, I prep for the next week. So like Mondays are prepping for math and history for the following week. So I have all my papers ready first thing in the morning. So, and I have prepped it the week before, just so if I'm out or, if something gets crazy in the morning, everything's ready for, either a sub, hopefully not, or, just kind of running in crazy in the morning. And so, yeah, I teach English and history, math, science, and religion. And oops, almost lost the mic back. And it depends. Sometimes I leave at 3:45. Sometimes I'm there till 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will say my first year teaching, there's a lot more prep involved. I was getting there at 7 in the morning, and I didn't leave until 6 most days.
Wow.
It's first year stinks. But honestly, you kind of get the hang of it, and it becomes much easier.
Okay. So hang in there.
Hang in there.
If
yeah.
you go and
yeah.
it's tough that first year, hang in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben, tell us about your day.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. The first year and the second year are vastly different, like we said. The first year really can't tell you even necessarily that the job is right or wrong for you because it's like being in training constantly. Every day is different. So first year, a similar story where I would show up like at 7 o'clock in the morning. That means for me, I'd like to take a lot of time to prep in the morning, be waking up at 5:30 a.m. and then starting my day, getting there by 7, and then, yeah, oftentimes leaving the building 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And that was a full day. So that's teaching classes and prepping for classes. This year, it's a lot more relaxed because I actually have a lot of different hats. I'm a teacher. I'm head of men's formation. I'm also in charge of lunch planning. So I have to make sure all the kids get to lunch. It sounds mundane, but it's actually kind of complicated.
It's very important. It's very important.
Yeah, so I think some main themes with our schedules are get there early. I think teaching really lends itself to waking up early because you need to get to that printer. And the reason you need to get to that printer is because you need to have your stack of papers for the day ready to go. You cannot be printing that 5 minutes before class or because that 5 minutes is never going to come. There's always something that will just rise up to the surface. Some kid will walk in and have a bloody knee. I don't know. It's just like random stuff. You'll never be bored in this job.
That's true. That's really true. I forgot parent communication. You're constantly emailing parents. At least we are in first grade. Just keeping them informed. And then obviously staff meetings. We just had a staff meeting today.
Oh, you did?
So,
Okay.
yeah. So lots of other things that kind of flow in and out of the daily schedule. Sorry, I forgot to mention. So.
No, that's great. So it's not just showing up, teaching your classes, and getting out of there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of prep work in between. When do you all grade? And it's probably different based on the subjects and types of work that you guys assign, but.
I try to get all my grading done at the end of the day. So all of that day's assignments get done, but I'm not grading essays.
Sure.
I wish, but my first graders are not writing essays.
Okay. What about you, Annie?
I'm still working. I'm doing it. I'm trying to figure out my schedule because it does feel very first year for me right now. So when you asked me even to do the Life on Tap, it was like I was going through that first year feeling of like being very overwhelmed with my time and everything. But then I was like, hey, maybe by September 20th, I'll actually feel like I can do something other than teach right now.
Sure.
So, but lots of times I grade at night. My favorite thing is to just turn on a sports game and just grade. And I just sit on the couch and grade. So if you're happy doing that, then you would love teaching.
So what's interesting, so you saying that you're feeling you're a first year teacher right now?
Yes.
That's because of your experience at Seton Teaching Fellows.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that was different?
Yes. So there are so many benefits that I received from being a Seton Teaching Fellow that have helped so much with this year. I was not lesson planning basically at Seton Teaching Fellows, which was such a grace because it was, we're all Christendom students, or I was, and I was going into education and there's no education major here. So I wanted that experience, not just getting thrown into a classroom right away, because I didn't think that was gonna be a good situation for me. So then when Seton Teaching Fellows showed up, I was like, oh, you're actually just an aide in a kindergarten classroom? And then I teach my own fourth graders after school. So our day would be from 7 to 3:30, and then at 4, I get my fourth graders, and I teach them for roughly 2 hours in the after school. So that's where I got most of like the teaching experience, having to get in front of 15 Bronx kids. It feels like 30 kids, and it's like, yeah, and you're a first year teacher, and they know that you're a first year teacher because they also had a teacher last year that was a first year teacher, so these kids just know how to play with you. And so that's why it's a little different this year, because I'm lesson planning and grading, whereas last year Seton gave me all the lesson plans that I had to teach. So it was a lot more given to me. But all of the classroom management and all of those experiences, just being able to instruct kids, that was all given to me last year. But then,
But you still had experience. You got
yeah,
lots of good stuff.
yeah.
So now, Ben, your experience last year was at a much more traditional school, right? The
Yes.
K through 8. And so now with the Montessori school, tell us about how that's different and how the lesson planning is different, the activities that you're doing with your students.
Yeah. Okay, so just to be fair here, the Montessori school, it is a Montessori school, but once you get to like eighth grade, well, sixth grade and up, it turns more into a classical school.
Okay.
So I'm not really doing the Montessori thing.
Okay.
So my math class looks awfully a lot like the previous one.
Okay.
Now, I will say the big difference for me between my previous school and the one I'm at right now is, where do we go with this? It was a first-year school where a lot of the kids were coming from public school, and so learning to be able to work a crowd, being able to have classroom management skills, that was an absolute need there, and I learned a lot. Whereas, like at my school right now, a lot of the kids have great parents and they're like they're really good-hearted, even though they have their own flaws. But they will actually like self-police each other. Like if someone else is talking, they'll actually shush one another. It's like, oh, the teacher's talking. My previous school, they wouldn't have done that. I had to teach them that, and so I picked up a lot of skills at the previous place that I wouldn't have picked up at my current place because they don't need that. And I think I can't stress that enough, that you need to be in that situation. You need to be thrown into the fire to learn those skills, or else you're never going to actually learn them, and you're not actually going to be a good teacher. Yeah.
So you're teaching math now,
Yep.
and you taught math previously.
Yes.
Did you major in math?
Nope.
Oh,
No,
can't see that. So tell us how you got into math, and how's that going?
Okay, there's this thing where schools need teachers, and they don't always need a qualified teacher. They just need a person in a room that can be in charge of a number of kids. And that sounds really pessimistic. But
It's okay. It's kind of
I
the
was
truth.
I was teaching lower math. I'm teaching pre-algebra and algebra, okay? I'm not teaching calculus or trigonometry. So to be fair, I wasn't.
Sure.
But I will say there were some courses I was teaching where I had to study up beforehand. So I was teaching kids things that I didn't even know. I had to research beforehand, and that was interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true of some of the stuff you're teaching. I mean, you're teaching like 5 different subjects.
Well, but it's the first grade level, so hopefully I'm qualified.
Hopefully you remember everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that just made me think of something, and then it left my brain. Oh,
Sorry.
well, let's talk about getting your teacher licensure. So, just so you all know, last I knew, in the Diocese of Arlington, you do not have to have your teaching license in order to teach there. You have to have 6 education credits from an undergrad institution. So, what is 6 credits here that I just talked about? Teaching practicum. So that counts, and then the person I talked to years ago,
Actually,
go ahead,
though,
yes.
you do need classroom management courses,
Oh,
so it
interesting.
has changed.
It has changed a
Yeah.
little bit. Excellent. I'm so glad
Yeah.
you're here to tell me that. Then also, they had to take the VCEA. Was that still true? The Virginia Catholic Education Association test?
Yes, I think is that a test or is that just the name of the license?
I thought it was a test.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
Look, we're all learning together.
Yay.
But in the Diocese of Richmond, they do require you to have a teaching license. So if you want to teach at a diocesan school, you will need to do some of that research and contact the Office of Catholic Schools within the diocese to find out what's required and what's not. Okay, so the state licensure is going to be a little bit different in every single state, what is actually required, but you are going to have to take some education courses at a different school because we don't offer those kinds of classes. So tell us more about what you've done so far and what else you have left to do.
Sure. So when I graduated, I obviously didn't have a license, so I got a job here at Farnborough Christian School because I could. And my plan was to go home. So I had looked up some licensure programs, and honestly, it's basically like getting a master's, which is a little bit frustrating because that's a lot of coursework. So you can do just the licensure program where you take all the state tests and you take. So I guess there are 3 universities that have a partnership with the VDOE, so the Virginia Department of Education, that will help you get your teaching license. and that you'd take like maybe 8 extra credit hours to get a master's. So I was like, forget it, I'm just gonna go and get my master's. And then with the licensure program.
Okay.
But in the process, I realized that I have no desire to teach at a school that requires a teaching license. Because as I have been working on my master's, the kind of philosophy that guides mainstream education, or at least the like teacher education, is incredibly progressive, and it's just obviously like the complete opposite of what you guys are doing here at Christendom. So I guess I'm grateful that this is kind of the path I'm on, because honestly, you can only make the decision in front of you with the information you have at the time, and so that's what I had at the time, and that's kind of where I am now, and I'm grateful, absolutely, and I know that that's what God's will was at the time and is now, obviously, still, but I wouldn't recommend it. I don't know if I can stand up here and say that.
You can
okay, I wouldn't recommend it. Don't do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I would also encourage you to really look at the schools that you hope to teach at. And actually, it was super interesting because Father Pollard was talking about this several years ago. And he was saying you see a lot of Catholic schools, like, K-12 schools, that are not super Catholic anymore. And you kind of wonder, well, why is that? It's because they require their teachers to be licensed. Because their teachers have gone through this, super progressive schooling. They didn't have great educations like we have here at Christendom or other, really strong Catholic schools. And so, they've lost that Catholic identity. They have Marxism packaged in this beautiful box that they hand to their students, and it's just, it's not a great situation. So that would be my take on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that personal experience.
Yeah.
I want you all to know there are so many schools that we are connected with that don't require you to have a teaching license. The teaching practicum is definitely sufficient. They will even, like Ben said, they'll hire people who are interested in teaching, but maybe you can't fit in that teaching practicum into your schedule, but you still want to teach. You're still going to be able to find places that will hire you. We have lots of great connections, so go ahead.
Can I just say about that one thing before my other thing?
Yes,
If
please.
I forget it. You guys, having a Christendom degree is actually really significant right now because we have a lot of charter schools and other schools that are geared towards the liberal arts and classical education. If they see that degree, they don't care what you majored in. They want you. I will say Latin teachers are going to be making bank in the next few years, in my opinion, because there's a lot of need for Latin teachers and not many people know how to teach Latin. So one good reason to pay attention to your Latin classes.
I will tag on to that. I get more emails for Latin teachers and math and science teachers. So if you have any interest in math and science, take the classes here because you will feel more prepared to teach it outside of the first grade level, which you might already feel prepared for. So yes.
Yeah,
What's your other thing?
One thing that I wish I had known beforehand was knowing what kinds of schools are out there. Could we go through that briefly?
Please,
Because
share.
I had no idea.
Do you want me to, or do you?
I'd like you to.
Fill in my gaps here. So there are public schools. There are private schools, such as Chelsea. Chelsea is a non-diocesan school, is that correct?
It's independent private.
So it's an independent private school. And then there are the diocesan schools, which I'm trying to think of one that would be in the area.
There aren't any in Warren County, but Sacred Heart is the closest.
Sacred Heart in Winchester. Okay, so Sacred Heart is connected to the diocese. And so if you all know the difference of what that means, I'd love to hear that.
Salary.
Salary? Okay.
Actually, no.
What?
No.
Tell me.
Gasp.
I love
Bailey's
that.
also been teaching for 4 years.
Yes.
I know. I
difference.
learned so much tonight.
So the diocesan schools within the Diocese of Arlington, they do have a starting salary and they have more of a salary range that they're offering everybody that's coming in as a first-year teacher. Whereas Chelsea could probably decide on their own based on qualifications, et cetera, what they're gonna pay you. Then there are charter schools, which are not affiliated with any faith, but they're public, and they're paid for by the government, by the state, and often we're seeing the ones that we're connected with are typically classical charter schools. So they're teaching classical education, but there's no faith component to it. Then there are Christian schools, and then there are Montessori schools. And so there are Montessori, Ben was kind of touching on that earlier. Montessori education is a lot for the little kids. So it's teaching them a lot of independence and self-autonomy and doing things on their own and helping kind of guide their education based on their interests. And so there is an entirely different certification process if you want to go the Montessori route. And we have somebody who is just graduated in May and is studying to get her Montessori licensure while she's working. And so the school she's working for is paying for her to go through that program. Because it's a different type of education that you have to learn in order to go about that. What other schools am I missing? That's a lot.
Yeah, for me, the distinction kind of came down to private, charter, and public.
Okay.
I steered away from public.
Sure.
I didn't even know about charter, and I was originally going to go for private. And then I heard about charter. I thought my charter school was really interesting because it happened to have a lot of Catholics working at it, so a lot of like-mindedness at my school, even though I didn't know anyone. It was super helpful. But again, like if you're in the classical education kind of sphere, you're going to be likely Christian or Catholic a lot of times.
Absolutely. We have connections with Great Hearts Academies, which are in Texas and Arizona. I think they're also expanding elsewhere. So those are charter schools down there that do the classical education, and they have a really great program. And then Youngsville Academy is in North Carolina, and that was founded by two Christendom alums, Doug and Emily. Hopefully I
Yes,
have that
that
right.
sounds right.
Doug and Emily Henson. Hopefully they'll come back and visit. Again, we have somebody working with them, and they decided that they wanted to start their own charter school, and so they went through that whole process. So if that's of interest to you, I actually think there is a student here now who is interested in starting their own school in the future, so I'll probably connect them there. So yes, we've got lots of connections with school stuff. Where shall we go next? Let me think about this. You mentioned what you wish you had known before. What do you all wish you had known before you went into teaching, that you want to impart the wisdom to them?
I can fill in.
You really cannot be afraid to fail as a teacher, because you will evidently fail, and then you'll have to pick yourself back up, and then you'll have to go back in front of those kids, and you really, and kids are truth tellers, and my kindergarteners last year in the Bronx, or my fourth graders, just no filter, told me everything. And so I just had to be completely myself in front of them. So don't be afraid to be yourself as a teacher, because they'll read into your fakeness or your ingenuineness.
Yes.
Disingenuineness,
Your
maybe?
disingenuineness. And and then you will also, you'll learn a lot about yourself. Yeah.
Chris, I like that.
I didn't realize how much flexibility I would need, but it's, and I mean, I think you sort of imagine that there's kind of a general level of like flexibility in life in general that you need, but I think the amount that you need, especially working with little people, I think learning that has been really helpful for me, just kind of growing as a person, but I think I would have liked to know beforehand that, this is going to be a lot harder than I think I imagined.
Okay.
At least first year, it gets better, I promise.
Yeah.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. No, go for it.
People said the first year was hard. I'm like, okay, I've worked some pretty hard days. I'm sure it won't be that bad. First year is hard, because for the same reason, you are going to make mistakes. That fear you have going into a classroom and like you're going to walk in and have no control of the classroom, that will happen first year. Like just go into it knowing that you're going to fall down, you're going to pick yourself back up, and you're going to learn how to deal with it in the future. That's it. It's a sad truth, but it is true. You have to learn by fire. I had, at my school, they did an incredible job training me. I don't think you could have done a better job training people, first-timers, and telling them what to expect. I still had to go through that process, no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even though you got the training,
Yeah.
it was still tough. So it sounds like you need humility, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's very
Well, and I
important.
think sometimes the fear of failure is more scary than actually failing. Like once you lose control of a classroom and you can just stand there and be like, wow, this is completely out of control, but I'm still alive, I made it. Then it gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been there before, I feel ya. Although I've lost control of college student classrooms before. All right, so tell us, because you've been talking about it, tell us about a time you did struggle. What is a time that you failed that you can share with us, an experience?
I can
Yeah.
go ahead and start. About 3 weeks into my first year teaching, I called my mom in tears and I said, is it too early to quit? And she said, yes, Bailey, it is too early to quit. So, but there were lots of days where there's so much energy in the classroom and you're trying to juggle so many things and teach them and keep them alive and send them home to their parents and then let their parents know they did a great job, that it's just like, whoa. And plan for the next day, don't forget about that. Where I would close the door, turn the lights off at the end of the day, sit under my desk, cry, and then plan for the next day. And
Sure.
it's just, I mean, maybe that's me being dramatic, so sorry, it might not happen to you. But,
I'm sure there are others who have cried under the desk.
Yes.
You're not the only one. Yeah.
but yeah, so
Okay.
not easy.
My failure story probably, I'm not a big crier, and I didn't think I was going to cry my first year. But yes, about 3 weeks in, probably actually sooner. And I lost control and something major happened in the classroom that I had to deal with. It was either like a fight broke out or something.
Oh, dear.
And there was a bunch, yeah. And there was a bunch of noise on the other side. So I just turned to the kids over there and I was just like, shut up. And I just shouted out, like, shut up. Like, and I just stared at one kid and I didn't mean to like lock eyes on him and yell shut up to him. But I just turned because I was like, okay, that worked. And I like started talking. And then they're all crowded around him and I'm like, what? Like, you know, a minute later, as Zaire's crying, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is Zaire crying? And then he's like, you told me to shut up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did not mean it to you. I just meant it to like everyone. I just needed everyone to shut up. And he's just like crying and he can't believe because he's so sensitive. And I'm 2 weeks in with these kids too, so I don't know them personally. Now thinking back, I'm like, Zaire, yeah, that was the wrong kid to like make eye contact with and say shut up. But so then he started crying a lot, and then I just had this like immediate just like fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm like failing, and like I just yelled shut up. Now he's gonna go tell his mom that I yelled shut up to him. And then so then I started crying right then, like all 15 kids out of control right there, and then I'm crying, and then Zaire's like crying, and then all the kids are like, teacher's crying, teacher's crying. Yeah, they didn't even call me Miss Heisler at that point. I was just teacher. And so then, but then he like looked at me. He stopped crying once I started crying. He was like, you're not supposed to cry. You're my teacher. And then I was like, I know, but I'm just so sorry that I yelled shut up to you. And so then I immediately called for help because there were managers of the after-school program. So they stepped in, and I was like, I need to go talk to this kid one-on-one. So I had him out in the hall, and we just sat down. And like I said, you need to build relationships with these kids. Like you need to be firm at first, but you also need to be able to open yourself up, let them see who you are so that they feel more comfortable with you. And then you're just gonna be able to talk to them. So we talked just about family and his brothers, and then, yeah, and then he was so sweet. He was like, Miss Heisler, I'm not gonna tell my mom. I didn't even tell him that I was like worried he was going to tell his mom, but he read it, and then I was like, no, Zaire, I'm gonna tell your mom. Like, like I think I should walk you out to like after school and talk to your mom. And I was so nervous. I hadn't walked a kid out to the parent before. I hadn't really talked to these parents, and they're Bronx parents. And so they always come in like different moods because they're working usually all the time. And but I walked out, and then his little brother Xavion was there, and then I was just like, I'm so sorry, but the class was getting so loud that I turned and I yelled, "Shut up!" And Zaire thought I was yelling at him, but I was just yelling at everyone. So he started crying. I just wanted to let you know. So parent communication is, and she was so sweet. She was like, "Oh yeah, I understand. I understand kids feel." Yeah, like I've had also like horror stories about bad parents that just look over you and you're like, you're so demeaning. But then, but she was so, it was a really good first parent communication. So that's my failure.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
If she can deal with that, you all can go into the classroom and deal with stuff like that too.
Yeah.
You'll come out
Just
and
don't yell, "Shut up."
and you still wanted to teach. Like you stayed with it and you
Yes.
came back to teach again. And so that speaks
I
of
did
your
have to
character.
go back into the classroom after crying. That is something you should not, I wouldn't recommend it. Because once the kids know that they can make you cry, you could lose like all control and authority. So I had to go back in and like explain. They understood. And just going back in the next day also was kind of hard.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But you came out the other side. Yes, wonderful. Ben, do you have a story to share?
It's very similar to those two experiences. One is just like, call me back home.
Lots of crying.
I will not confirm nor deny that I may have cried. I won't confirm or deny. But the second thing, I had a similar story where a student was being particularly annoying, and it had to do also just like he had like certain mental difficulties, like he could not focus really easily. He couldn't help but like say something that was really funny to everyone else, and so I ended up just saying like, even like in a low tone, I was just like, "You're being really annoying right now," and like just straight to his face, and I'm like, I realized what I had said. Like, it was just a certain tone, and just like, I was being brutally honest. Just like, "You're being really annoying right now." And I was like, he just did that to me. And so I just like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And I just felt really bad after the fact. I apologized to him, made him clear, like, no, I do care about you as a student. But you will have those moments where like the kids do break the line, and you're just gonna, you have to be patient as much as you can, but you gotta always grow from it. So.
Okay.
I do have something to add to that, that I learned first year, that I have this image now behind my desk, and it's the storm, and Jesus and his apostles are on the boat, and Jesus is sleeping, and it's chaos, but Jesus is sleeping. So whenever I feel like I'm out of control or something, I just picture like, oh, Jesus is sleeping, and he was able to sleep in chaos. I'm able to just stand here and take it. It'll pass over like the storm, but once you let that frustration get to you, that's why I yelled, "Shut up."
Yeah.
They shouldn't be able to take you and take anything from you, actually. So you do need to make boundaries for yourself. Don't let yourself get so frustrated that you will say something that you regret.
Yeah.
So just, being able to like create those boundaries and being like, all right, that's you, this is me, and just, not taking it too personally is huge as a teacher.
Okay, so tell us something you're really proud of in the work that you've done, or some really heartwarming story to kind of lift us back up.
Yeah.
Oh man.
If you've got one, go for it.
Stuff.
Oh dear, it's taking them a very
No,
long time.
No, it's just,
there's so many, I can't even think.
I will say there was an instance where you have to be very, you have to mean what you say as a teacher. And so disciplining is really difficult, especially as a first-year teacher, because you want to be the teacher that all the kids love. You want to be liked, but you have to learn at a certain point you have to hold the line. And at the school I was working at, if the kids cross the line, you have to give out detention for it. And I had a really hard time giving out detentions. And that's this whole different problem. If you don't hold the line, then you're going to have a harder time down the line. That's why I had a problem with the first year. Anyways, I gave a detention to this little boy, and he was so distraught. He ended up crying there in the class in front of all of his friends. And he ended up just like crying to himself. And then after class, I tried to console him. He was just still going and going. And I think it was like the first time he ever got detention. And he just thought it was the worst thing in the world. I'm like, no, it's just saying like this one action he did was not appropriate, and we just need to be addressing it. And it's not saying anything about you. And then we just worked through it. And then like after that day of doing that, he was like the most cheerful out of all the class. He was always like smiling at me and like saying hello, Mr. Guza. And I don't know what it was about that experience, but the fact that I showed him that I cared, from then on, we were just the best, me and him.
That's
and it was just really sweet, because you wouldn't think that would be the case. After that, you'd think he'd hate me after giving him detention. But strangely enough, it works its way around to where if they know that you care about them, they actually come to love you more.
Yeah. Well, and you were teaching him the lesson behind it.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that you separated it from it. It's not him as a bad person.
Yeah.
He's not a bad kid. His action was inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so I think that's helpful. What do you have?
So I had a student first year, just really, really sweet kid, but he would get so angry and then he would just kind of shut down. And anytime he didn't want to do something, we had the desks with like the pockets in them, and he would pick his desk up and dump the contents out onto the floor.
Oh dear.
And he would, throw things at other kids. But he had the best sense of humor, and so it ended up kind of being anytime he would shut down, we would sort of I would make a joke and he would laugh and we would kind of get back to work. And so it was just kind of being able to see what he needed, and it was humor, and he was such a bright kid, to where his sense of humor was, like, he could appreciate irony even at like 7 years old.
Wow.
And so just being able to kind of find what the student needs and to kind of be able to facilitate that at the time. So that was...
Was there less desk dumping after you figured that out?
A little bit less desk dumping.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Though we would
positive.
make a game of cleaning it back up. So it was
very
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Okay.
It's still fun.
Can you think of one?
I guess with, like, back to Zaire, he ended up, like, after that day, he ended up also just, like, similar, just, like, hugging me, like, every single time he saw me, like, and this is a 4th grade boy, which at that point, they're kind of, like, too cool for that. So
I have a 4th grade son.
Yeah.
I know. He doesn't even want to hug me.
Yeah.
Let alone a teacher. My goodness.
Yeah, but so Zaire and me just had a really special relationship throughout the rest of the year, and yeah, he was just really.
That's so great to hear. You guys were able to turn some of these tough situations around. I love that.
I think those are the students that end up really having a place in your heart, because you just have to work with them so much more intensely, and you just kind of, you realize how amazing they are.
Yeah. Yes. Do you have something else?
Well, I was just thinking of one of my really hard kids last year. His name's Angel, and he was really difficult. He just wouldn't sit down. He'd jump around and everything. But at the end of the year, someone told me that there was this kid at the back of Adoration at the local church that would have Adoration every night. And he had his basketball, and so then one of the other fellows went up and asked him his name, and it was Angel, and he had just gone there by himself, and he's not baptized, not Catholic, and he just lived in the projects right next to the church, and would just go down after and would sit in the back of Adoration. So yeah, just like stories like that where it was like, wow, like I'm teaching him about Jesus, but knowing that like he's taking it the next step of going himself. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that is it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You were having such an impact on
Glory
him.
story.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what time it is yet. Okay. We're like an hour in. I want to give you all a chance to ask questions in just a minute. So I want to ask you all to kind of share, is there anything that you would suggest the students pursue maybe during the summer breaks? Like what kind of jobs they should do, on campus work, or while they're here working in town? What do you recommend they do to build their resume, build their skill set, and build their knowledge to become a teacher? Ben?
I can go. My junior year, I looked at local schools because I knew I wanted to stay in the area for the summer. So I looked at Mountain Laurel Montessori Academy, and I ended up working with them for a summer program. It wasn't like Montessori method, but I got to be with kids and figure out, okay, am I going to actually be able to work with kids? And it was with younger kids, probably close to your age. And I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I realized, okay, this isn't for me working with the little ones because I want to talk about higher concepts. I want to go a little bit deeper. So I realized, okay, well, my search is going to be with more high school, middle school age. So that was a big help for me. I would recommend doing assistant positions, like teacher assistants. And then, of course, the practicum. I think we all did the practicum. It was very helpful. You get to see the job inside and out, talk to teachers. Can't recommend it more enough.
No, honestly, I mean, summer camps and teaching practicum, I can't add anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Totus tuus in the summers.
Yes.
Almost, a great majority of the fellows that I was with in the Bronx did totus tuus, and they got a lot from it. I just would hear stories. Oh yeah, my time at totus tuus, and yeah, it was Helen, yeah.
If you aren't familiar with Totus Tuus, you can come see me. We can talk about it. And we have some people on campus that have done it, and I have connections with people who've graduated that have also done it. So we can get you in there. Wonderful. Did you have something else to add?
I will say I wanted some real knowledge about teaching, like the skill that goes into it. Beforehand, I got experience with that with the practicum, but I wanted a book. I finally got a book at the end of my first year. I think I might send you the 2 books I received. They're fantastic in terms of giving you a good rundown of what you're going to run into first year and what are some real skills or techniques you're going to be using in the classroom. So actually reading about it before implementing it, that'll help you a lot, especially if you don't have formal training going into it. So I'll send those your way.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. We have Gabrielle in the back with microphone. So if you have a question for them, please raise your hand and she will come find you. We have one all the way up front. Oh, I think we'll start over here. We'll come to you, Carla. All right, over here. There you go. Yep. Go ahead.
Hi, so I've talked to a lot of teachers. I have a lot of teachers as friends, and they've always talked about like the bureaucratic aspect of being a teacher. So dealing with coworkers that are extraordinarily difficult, or parents or administration who really just don't understand like what you're doing in actuality. So I don't know if you've encountered that at all, like with being Montessori and Catholic private, but like if you have, could you speak to that possibly?
Yeah, it definitely comes up. And I think going back to realizing that you guys are all on the same team is really helpful. Actually, I recently read a book called Crucial Conversations. It's not about teaching, but I would highly recommend it just for having those difficult conversations. And it does get messy, and I think being in a Catholic school is also really helpful because you are praying together. You really do have things that kind of keep you grounded. But I would definitely say before you go into kind of any big, meeting or anything, definitely praying beforehand, but then also assuring the other people involved that, we are on the same team, we do have the same mission, we're all here for that particular student, whether it's, the parent or an administrator. And then I think also really understanding your place in the system. Like sometimes you might think you have a great idea, but it's just not yours to implement. And you just have to have the humility to say, okay, I can make decisions in my classroom, but big picture, I can't control it. So that would be my take on it.
I will say boundaries are a big thing. Parent emails are always tricky sometimes because you'll have parents who are getting information from the student directly, and the student is giving their side of things, they're not giving your side of things. So those they just by their nature, are kind of tricky. So there's just some natural boundaries you need to set. realizing that you are the teacher, you have your rules go in the classroom, but also like it's just like practical things. So like my school had the policy of never respond to a parent email outside of work hours, or else you're going to feel obligated to answer those emails like on a Sunday when you're like, no, you should just leave it be. They're going to feel like, oh, they can contact you at any time, but no, you're on that time. So you got to set those boundaries for yourself. That helps quite a bit.
I would say to that, also never give out your personal number. I taught during COVID, so that was my first year teaching, so I taught second grade over Google Meet. I don't recommend it. But we were giving out our numbers, and I mean, you'd have like parents super upset calling you at like, 7 a.m. Saturday morning. And so it was just, don't trust that your parents have good boundaries. So just don't give out your personal number.
Sure. All right. Next question. Did you have one as well? Okay. Come on. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. This is really helpful. In regards to managing discipline, do you have any advice for, like, say a student says something inappropriate or talks back to you?
Have you not had to deal with it?
I
or?
stare at them with dignity.
So those are pretty grievous in the classroom. If it's really obvious that they're kind of questioning your authority in the classroom, where they're really trying to stand up to you and make themselves into something bigger than they are. What I would do is I would just immediately say, step outside, we're going to talk. And I would immediately have the rest of the class start a different assignment for like the span of a minute or so. Go out and talk to them for a minute, address it personally. And with discipline, you have to always treat it very much as your action was inappropriate. It's not saying anything about you personally, but again, you have to keep that balance. I'm just saying this was a very inappropriate action. We don't talk like that in the classroom. If you want to talk about this more, let's talk about it after class. Oftentimes, they won't come up to you after class because they got the message.
Sure. What about you all? Do you have something?
Oh, I'd say whatever you do, don't get angry because you've immediately lost all authority.
Okay.
Usually I try to, I'm still working on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's tough. It's tough.
We'll bring them back in a couple years and they
Yeah.
can answer that. All right. Gabrielle. Oh.
This question is more specifically for Annie, but did you notice any differences between teaching kids who are practicing Catholics and are very committed practicing Catholics versus kids who aren't, either Catholics, practicing Catholics, or even Christian?
Yes, major difference, but what I did notice is that kids just love the truth. If you believe in what you are teaching them, and it was very easy for me, it was my Catholic faith, then they will believe it too, and they will learn it. And they are not even baptized, but they know that if they are not baptized, then they will go to hell and they won't go to heaven. Like all my Bronx kids knew it, and they all knew that they wanted to go to heaven. And I had this one kid who would just be like, I just want to die and go to heaven. And so they did have this like belief that what I was telling them was true. So in that way, it's very similar to the Chelsea kids, that they believe what you are teaching them is true. And I did notice that the Bronx kids were more receptive to like me as like a role model in their life, because I loved them, and then the Chelsea students have other people who love them just as much, but then the Bronx kids would not go home to maybe a loving home. So for me to be able to teach them was like a lot. They received it because I loved them. Yeah. So
That's very special.
yeah.
Okay. Carla has had her hand up. Let's get her.
So especially with your last answer, and you guys have all mentioned connection with the kids. So I guess my question is kind of around emotional exhaustion. Like, is just like having so many connections with the kids, do you find that takes a toll on you and your energy, and how do you deal with that?
Sure.
I'm introverted. I say that. I don't know how I got into teaching. But I will say the connection with the kids is what sustains you. Like, I think, if anything, that's what keeps you going. I had this one kid at the end of my year, he asked me if he could have my phone number. He's like the sweetest kid, and he just wanted to keep in touch just because we had that connection. I'm like, I really want to, but I can't. If your parents, like, I gave him another option that was less personal. But yeah, it's just like them showing that they care for you. I think on a daily basis, even just having eye contact with students in the hallway, knowing that you're known and that they know that they're known, I think that's what keeps you going as a teacher. That's why you have teachers who can go all day with no energy, but somehow it's just, that's what keeps you going.
What about you all?
I think there are certain times of the year that are extra hard. October and February, like every year, are just the hardest months. I don't know why. I think the initial excitement of school has worn off by October, and Christmas break is still way too far to be at hopeful for. And then, yeah, February just stinks. But I think filling your time outside of work also. I know my first year just spending, getting there at 7 and leaving at 6 didn't leave a whole lot of time to do other things, and I was just so exhausted. But I like to think of my evenings as like mini weekends, and so I do, like, I shove as much as I can in, whether it's like grad school or friends, and just lots of different things, so that you feel like the time away from work is still full, and it's not like, okay, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock and the next thing on my list of things to do is to come back to work. So just filling that time with other good leisure. So.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Yeah.
Back here.
Thank you guys very much for coming to speak. My question is, how has your Christendom education and your Catholic faith informed your day-to-day teaching experience?
Sorry, influenced our what?
Day-to-day teaching
Our day-to-day,
experience.
okay.
I think just knowing that, especially, my little people are, well, I guess you guys, they're human beings too. Those middle schoolers, though, I don't know. But they are souls with crowns in heaven with their names on them, just waiting for them. And so realizing that I have one very short year to kind of love them and to help them along that journey. And every moment matters. And I think also realizing too that the work we do isn't only for other people, but it absolutely forms us as human beings. And it makes us the kind of people that hopefully, God willing, can enjoy the beatific vision. And so knowing that just really by submitting to all of the difficulties and all of the trials that, we're forming ourselves as well. So it's very hopeful, even in the dark days.
Do you have anything to add?
I would just say Christendom really helped me with my love for learning, and you're constantly, I probably use more brain-powered teaching than I did at Christendom. Just you're constantly learning as a teacher, learning the content you're about to teach, or learning ways to deal with problems, and it was all given to me at Christendom. All of these same experiences. I teach 2 literature classes, 6th and 7th grade, and I majored in English here. So I love reading and discussing books, and I would say Mrs. Hickson's class of just going through a book and being able to pull out things, I have reused her enthusiasm and love for what she does to be able to teach my kids that. And if you go in with more love and energy in the subject, it's so changing to how they receive it.
For sure. Yeah. Ben, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that the saying goes, you can't teach someone without being someone. Somewhat what you were saying. You have to have something in your own life that gives you life that you can share with them. So like reading, for instance. One thing I think my Christian education and other upbringing helped me. I think looking at our modern situation kind of critically or just like honestly, taking an honest look, I drive to work and I see the school bus picking up all these kids who are wearing the, like really, like, I don't know, they just look really sad whenever I go by. They're on their phones, they have their hoods up, they're just kind of like all in their own little world. And I see education as the way I think a lot of philosophers would say is it's a way of freeing people. And so I can really see the kids I'm working with and seeing I'm giving them freedom, I'm giving them the ability to have a good life, and seeing the good things that are available to them rather than just taking whatever's given to them by our modern culture. So it's giving them another option.
Okay. All right, we'll take 2 more. Oh my goodness, you guys have so many questions. I love it.
So my question is, what mindset or how do you approach keeping authority in your classroom?
I guess mine's a little different because I'm like twice their height. So, but I think really making sure that as soon as you see something that could get worse, that you shut it down immediately because it will get worse. And so once you kind of have established that authority, and I think really that those first several weeks are not super fun, just because you are really, and my kids are coming from kindergarten where they played all day, and so this is like actual school, so they're kind of, at the beginning of the year, they were struggling to kind of follow the rules and sit in their chair and, not pick each other's noses or, just...
Each other.
Yeah. And so, but just really kind of being on top of all of those behaviors and being able to see what's going on in the classroom, walking around, making sure. And I think, taking them outside, consequences are necessary sometimes so that they do understand. Natural consequences are always best, but sometimes having to sharpen all the pencils during snack time is effective. So.
I think that what I saw from last year is when I was teaching and the kids were out of control, and then my instructional coach would walk in, all of them would sit down and all of them would be quiet, and I'd be like, okay, so I know you guys know what you should be doing, but you're not giving me the authority. But I would try to not call on help as frequently because I wanted to be able to control the classroom without having help, because once the help came in, it would take away my authority. So I think you just have to be really wary when you are calling on assistance when you think you're out of control. Just kind of wait. Try to be patient. Patience is huge as a teacher. You really can just wait things out. So I would just not call on people to help, and then I would do this thing last year where if a kid was like talking or something or telling another kid like something, then I'd be like, point to the teacher. And then all the kids would point to me. So that was a way, I don't really know if that was like, okay, but they all knew like, oh yeah, you're the teacher, okay. And then it would kind of reset. I'm the one that's telling people what to do. You're not telling each other what to do.
That's great.
I would say this kind of falls under the heading of like having the skills of being a good room manager. It kind of comes down to this. You have to believe that you're in charge. And for me, that took a long time because I'm the youngest and I was always a follower. So even the concept of being the one that everyone had to look to, and I had to be like, okay, we're doing this now, and I had to believe it, that took me a while. But that's the mindset you got to have, because if you aren't in charge, then they are, and that's a problem for everyone.
Okay, one more question. Who's got, okay, maybe more than one question. Yes.
Hi, I was just wondering if it's possible to be a special ed teacher outside of the public school system and how much more education that requires.
Good question. Do you all have an answer to that?
So the school I previously taught at had an inclusion program, so we had special needs students in the classroom, and there were learning specialists there. So you can get a master's in special education and become a special education teacher. I'm not sure what the market is for special education teachers outside. I think it's just because most Catholic schools just don't have the budget for that. And I know there are some schools that do. And honestly though, I think it's going to become more necessary. So it's definitely an avenue I would consider.
Yeah, I saw that being a really core piece of my charter school, where there were kids who, I had one kid who was in my pre-algebra course, and they pointed to a question, like, this is probably like my 5th day at work. They pointed, it's like, Mr. Guza, what is this? And I looked at it, I'm like, that's a division sign.
Oh,
They had no clue.
okay.
I think there's a lot of things going into that, but I think COVID might be one of them. There's just a lot of things going on where kids just don't have the fundamentals right now for one reason or another. So I think there is an avenue for that, especially in charter schools, because they do have the budget for that.